Good morning, folks. It is April 12th, and today marks the beginning of our garage floor season. Jeff is pulling up behind me with the generator. I just want to walk into this house and I want to show you what I always say about preparation for concrete here. This was a floor we're going to be redoing. It was a broadcast floor installed by somebody else, and I'm not here to knock them. However, there's obviously a lack of preparation. I'll show you what happens. Okay, so this was a flake floor, and I'm going to try to show you. This obviously is hot tire pickup here, and you see when you get under this, that's what happens. That's what happens when you don't do the right preparation. When we grind the floor, you get a scratch in the concrete. There's no scratches, there's no nothing. This was probably acid etched, and there might have been like a slight oily film here or something, but obviously it didn't work. So this is what can happen with acid etching. Yes, you might get lucky with acid etching and you might not ever have an issue, but chances are it's going to fail at some point. And when it does, this is what you're going to get. So what we're going to do is grind all this off. We have to get down to clean white concrete, get a scratch in the concrete floor, and start over again. So you can see every spot where there was a tire. Now this side of the garage doesn't really look used that much at all, but every spot where there's a tire, there's a failure. So we're going to get started, get our equipment in, and I'll show you what we're going to do. Okay, so we have our grinder in here. I think we still have this set up with the 40 grit. Yeah, these are the 40 grit diamonds for extra hard concrete. So what we're going to do first, these joints, again, this was, I'm going to say painted. I hate to use the word paint, but this doesn't even look like epoxy. So what we're going to do is saw cut these joints, because the inside edges here, there's paint or epoxy, whatever this is, on there now. So we need to run the saw blade up there to expose clean white concrete. So we're just going to run this saw up and down the joints to clean them out. And see, I have the blade set to, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch or so. And these joints, I don't know if you can even see in here. They're about, looks like 1/2 inch deep. So that should be plenty to get down into these joints. So we'll clean the joints, fill the joints, then we're going to grind the whole floor. Then we're going to prime. We're probably going to put our intermediate coat on immediately thereafter and flake it today. Then tomorrow we'll come back, we'll do our clear top coat, and then we're done. Now these doors, what's also really nice about this is there's a drop down right here. And the other reason why I say I think this is paint, this edge here, epoxy it's thixotropic, so it tends to run after you apply it. This didn't, it just stayed there. So it's probably some type of concrete paint, but we have to grind this off. I have to get down to clean white concrete. So we're gonna terminate here, but what it does, it will allow us to close our garage door here and not affect this. Some other factors that most people don't think about when you're doing a floor is that tree right there, as pretty as it is, leaves these little leaves all over. And all you need is one gust of wind, and I can almost assure you all those leaves are going to come into the wet epoxy and stick to it like fly paper. So at least we can close the door when we're done. Okay, so I just want to get in here close. I'll show you what we have. So if you can see inside these joints now, we saw cut down, and now it's clean white concrete all the way down these joints. So now when we put our joint filler in there, it's going to bond to that. So that's what we're going to do now. After that sets, which should take about 15 minutes, we're going to shave it with the razor, and then we're going to grind the whole floor. All right, I know I'm always talking about preparation. Preparation is the most important part of a floor, but one thing I did want to show with this also is, you see this concrete, there's no scratch in it. I know I mentioned that earlier, but it's dirty under there. So if this was acid etched, and I'm guessing it was because you can see there's some slight porosity there, but there's still dirt there. Nothing's going to stick to that. What I do want to show you is over here, there's hot tire pickup here too. Look at how clean that concrete is underneath there. There's still no scratch. There was no prep work, maybe acid etched, but it still didn't stick. So you really need to diamond grind this, get the scratch on there, and then it's going to stick. That's a result of acid etching or not properly neutralizing the acid after it was applied, or something to that effect. All right, one thing I did want to point out, this front edge here has whatever it is, paint or epoxy, whatever. We've got to grind this off and get that to clean white concrete. So that has to be done by hand. So I'm going to use this hand grinder up on edge there and do the best I can with that before we do the whole floor. We're still waiting for the joint filler to set. That should be soon, and then we'll continue with that. So one thing I want to say, we pride ourselves on doing everything dustless. When you're working on an edge like this and you can't keep the dust shroud flat on the concrete floor, dust escapes. There's nothing you can do about it. So you'll see what happens when I'm up on edge. Yes, you get a little bit of dust there, and obviously we're wearing masks. It's kind of part of the process, but the rest of the floor is going to be virtually dustless as long as you can keep the muzzle down on the floor. Normally, Jeff will run the grinder first and then I'll edge, but in this case it came up so easy I decided to do the edge prior to Jeff using the big grinder. All right, so now I went around the edge. That went pretty quick. This concrete's a lot softer than I thought. Normally you run into pretty hard concrete in a newer home. This development is so new, they're still building houses at the end of the street. So I don't know when exactly this home was built, but I'm taking a guess in the last 2 years. I really don't know. So I'll show you what I did. Okay. So I got the grinder all along that front nose. Now when I grind that front nose, I actually recarve a rounded edge on that front nose. And there's a little bit of paint down in that very small corner there. You can't get to it with the grinder. But the important thing is right here, this is where your tire's gonna hit every time you come in. So you need clean white concrete all across that nose. This is what we have. So I went all the way around the edge. You can't grind these verticals. There's no point. There's never any stress on a vertical wall anyway. And if you drive your car into it and chip it, you have a bigger problem anyway. So I went all the way around the edge. See how we got in there. I want to show you the scratch we have. So you see that scratch in the concrete? That's what you want before you put a coating on. So we're going to clean up this edging equipment. We're going to get at it with the big grinder. And we're going to continue on. We're changing out the diamonds. We had on diamonds for extremely hard concrete, and this is not. So we're taking those off, and we're going to be putting on a set of red 40s, which those I think will tear this up too, but at least it'll be controlled. If you have the wrong diamond on, it tears into the concrete so bad, one, you can actually stall the grinder out, and two, you just dig gouges in the concrete, which we surely don't want. All we're trying to do is get this coating off, get down to clean white concrete, and leave some semblance of a scratch. Okay, so we start the large grinder, and we always approach with caution when we first start, just to make sure we're not tearing the slab up too much or not enough. And normally I'll follow behind with a brush and I'll check a couple places to see what type of scratch we're getting. But what we found out very early on is that this slab was not very smooth. I don't like to use the word level, but there were a lot of low spots. So we ground over this. We have to go back and forth quite a few times to get these valleys ground out. So here I'm going to follow behind Jeff. When we run into this issue with lots of low spots, it's nice to vacuum right behind him. That way he can see through the dust
if there's an area that we have to hit again. And you can see how it's exposed when I vacuum that. And right now we're discussing how many low spots there are, so Jeff knows what to do with the big grinder. So he'll come back and he'll hit those big spots again. So we had so many low spots that we would have ground probably another 50 pounds of surface off of there. So it was easier to go in there with the hand grinder, just get the couple little spots that were so deep that the grinder couldn't get in the valley. So that's what I did with the small grinder, dressed up those little areas. Now we're vacuuming the entire floor and getting ready, and then we're gonna put our prime coat down now.
All right, so now all the prep work is done. I'm gonna flip this around and walk you through so you can see everything that we did. A couple things. It seems like every day that you do epoxy, it gets windy, and you know, we're constantly battling the elements. So today it's wind, and I know I showed it before, but there's a pretty tree out here, and all these little leaves are blowing around. But the good thing is we're not going underneath the garage door, so we're gonna be able to close the garage door when we're done, so none of that stuff will blow in here. So I'm gonna flip this around, I'll take you a walk around and show you what we did. Okay, so here was that edge. We ground that edge all the way across there, and like I said, this is actually dirt from the cord, but this edge is very important. This is where the tires impact every time it goes up into the garage. So that edge is extremely important to have clean all the way across. So we ground that the best we could. I got it in there with a 4-inch angle grinder afterwards too to get some more of that out of there. So now we ground everything, and the little pattern that you see on the floor here, I came on this with a hand angle grinder. After we were done, there were a couple low spots that the big grinder didn't hit. So I came out with an angle grinder just to make sure all that paint that was on here is off. So there's no paint left anywhere. You see the scratch in the concrete. This is 400 square feet. So we're using one of the 500 square foot kits that we sell. So it's 3 gallons of primer that we're going to be putting on here. And this concrete's pretty soft, so it's going to suck that primer up. But we're still going to have a little bit left over when we're done. So I'm going to put this camera away for a second. We're going to get set to coat, and I'll be back with you. I just realized I wasn't filming. So we are now getting ready to put the primer down. This is the 707 LVP. This is our intermediate coat, the 707. This is the 500 square foot kit that we saw on our website. This is the prime coat, that's the intermediate coat, and these are our flakes. So we're gonna do the prime coat first, wait 15 minutes, whatever, and then we're gonna put this coat right on it while it's still wet. We're gonna roll it right in it, and then we're gonna throw the flakes on. So I'm just gonna mix up the primer, and then we're gonna go.
So I do want to say, you don't have to do the intermediate coat on the wet primer. We do that, we're experienced, it's easy for us to do. And if you feel comfortable doing it, by all means you can. Normally 1 coat a day is what you would do. In this case, we're doing 2 on the same day because we're battling the elements.
So I'm pouring 4 to 6 inch wide ribbons. We're going to do 3 of these right across here. I don't want to over pour, because if you have a puddle in here when you're done, it's a pain to get out of here. You got to scoop it up. So I'm going to leave that set right there. Put my squeegee and my spikes. Okay, so we just poured this out. I just started squeegeeing here. One thing I want to point out, this is very porous concrete, and I had mentioned that I think earlier. I just squeegeed this, and you see all these tiny little holes in here? It's soaking into the concrete, which is perfectly normal and acceptable. This is why you use a primer. So when you push over one time, you're going to get those bubbles. You do it again, and it virtually gets rid of all the bubbles. You do it again, they're all gone. So this is why, you know, I squeegee back and forth. Everything is kind of redundant, and I always talk about consistency. But when I squeegee, I'm going to push a little puddle now on my left edge, so it kind of goes up against the wall. Now there's trim in the way. You see I'm hitting that trim? You see that little puddle I'm leaving there? That puddle is going to be enough to go up the wall. We're going up that. I have a big puddle, so I'm just going to push that away. I keep coming down here and leaving that 1/2 inch wide puddle there. And see the technique I'm doing now also, this squeegee is vertical. I'm just gonna pull this down underneath that pipe there. Now I have enough room I can. You see the puddle I'm leaving right at the base there? So now when we take our edger, we can roll into that puddle and go up the vertical with that. The holes left in the concrete, when I back drag this with the squeegee, they're all gonna go away again. Now I'm going back and forth. You see the overlap I'm doing? I'm almost overlapping in half. And you can see when I do this, you see the holes in the first pass. When I go right back over, because I'm doing it in a different direction, they're going. Now when Jeff back rolls this, that's going to take care of all that. It's all going to go away. I'm going to run this edge down a little bit and let the edge of your head. And I really don't have any weight on the squeegee. I'm kind of pushing down a little bit in the back of the squeegee. This is a fairly thin coat. It's soaking in pretty good. And what's interesting too, I don't know if you can, if you see here in the light, this is actually dry looking. You have to look in the right direction there, but it's actually soaking right into this concrete, which is exactly what you want with the primer. That's why we do it. And now you're on the right side here. See how this looks almost dry here? It just soaked right in. We need a puddle for you to wet out here. So what I just told Jeff is, Jeff always does the back rolling, so I'm going to leave a puddle here. He has an 18-inch roller over there. He's going to wet the roller up in that puddle. If you don't wet the roller up in a puddle and you start rolling out here, it's going to suck all the epoxy off the floor, and you're going to leave like dry paths on the floor. So I'll take the camera for a little bit just to show how Jeff does that. Okay. So Jeff's going to wet that up, and by doing that in a puddle, it's just so much easier to get your roller wet. If you do that on the dry floor, like I said, you're just going to leave a pattern on the floor. Now again, this is a 400 square foot garage. I still have about 3 inches of epoxy in the bottom of that bucket yet. So Jeff's wetting up the Whizzer, well, we call it a Whizzer, it's a 6-inch roller. The 6-inch roller and the 18, and now we have to do the edges. So I'm gonna have to put this camera down because I'll do the edges when Jeff does the rolling. So I'll set this up on time lapse so you can see what we're doing here a little bit.
I have no idea how this got blurry on us. I apologize about that, but at least you can kind of see the motion here. I'll speed this up a little bit, not to bore you with a blurry prime coat.
All right, now we're getting ready to put down the intermediate coat, which is the CFS 707. I'm gonna open this up quick. Okay, so again, this is 3 gallons. This is the 500 square foot kit.
Okay, so mixing this, same as the primer, you pour the B into the A, you make sure you mix around the edges really good, go up and down, get the bottom good, just make sure everything is mixed good. The last thing you ever want to do is not mix the epoxy properly and pour it on the floor. It will never set. So take your time, make sure it's mixed good, make sure it looks consistent, and then when it is, you can move on. This should take about 2 minutes to mix this. I fast forwarded just because it's boring to watch.
So you have to be careful when you're doing this next coat of epoxy. This is pretty smooth now, so when you're walking on this with spikes and you pour the fresh epoxy on top of this, it can get very slippery. So you have to walk very deliberately. Be careful where you walk and how you walk. Stay flat-footed. All right, that's all I'm going to pour out. I'm leaving like 2-3 inches in the bottom of this bucket. Again, this is 400 square feet.
Okay, so the intermediate coat, it's the same application as the prime coat. I poured the ribbons out 4 to 6 inches wide. You see the pattern I left on the floor there. I'm squeegeeing the exact same way. Jeff is wetting up the rollers now in the CFS 707. So as soon as I get this squeegeed out, he's going to start back rolling behind me perpendicular to the way I squeegee. That way you get a good consistent coat. You know, I'm always talking about the consistency thing. So that will take care of that issue.
Okay, now I ran out. I'm going to pour some more out here. And I know you can't see. I probably have 3 or 4 inches left in here. So again, you never want to over pour. So I'm just going to do one more ribbon across here. Don't want to go nuts.
So at this point, I'm just squeegeeing up to that front nose, and you don't want to leave too much there because if it runs down that front nose, it's going to run across the apron. It's just going to look horrible. So what I try to do is stay about a 1/2 inch back or so from that front nose and leave maybe a 1/4 inch wide puddle off the edge of the squeegee. Then I take that edging roller and I roll into that puddle to the leading edge and on that vertical, so you're not pushing a puddle over the edge. It's just more controllable that way. I'm sorry I can't get all of this on video, but I can't hold the camera while I roll and squeegee at the same time. So now I'm going to work that edge with the 6-inch edger there before Jeff runs the 18-inch roller over the whole floor. And all I'm doing is pulling the color up the wall. You don't want to put it heavy or it's going to run down the wall. In this case, there is a little perimeter joint, like 1/8 of an inch wide, so that material can run down in the joint if you make it too heavy. But don't put it heavy on the vertical surfaces.
Okay, so Jeff's working his way out here. So Terry, out in Oregon, I know we're working on your floor out there. You purchased a bunch of material from us. So you were asking me, how do you know if you're going to cover up the scratch? Well, this is the equivalent of a neat coat floor, which is the prime coat and the top coat. So this is what you would see, which is pretty much a mirror finish at this point. We're going to throw the flakes on here now, and you'll see how much that camouflages everything. All right, so I'm getting ready to flake now, and I always go through this on every video, and it seems like people always have questions about how to flake and all that other stuff. So I'm doing this perimeter wall too, so these flakes I'm going to have to throw into the wall, but I'm going to show you how to broadcast the flakes up in the air so you get a nice consistent pattern on the floor. So I'm going to try to angle this. I'm hoping you can see me. Jeff, can you look at that? Is that actually angled down where they can see the...
Let me get it. Okay.
All right, sorry, we're trying to deal with the camera here. So the best way to do it is throw into the wall like that. So I'm going to throw some flakes. And she wants a random pattern. She doesn't want it real heavy, so I'm not going for a full coverage by any means. I'm just trying to throw some into the wall here. And I'm just grabbing a pinch and I'm like backhanding it. And this is hard because this is underneath that trim, so it's not very easy to get to. now you see I did that wall. If I see a couple light spots, I can get a little bit more. So now throwing the actual flakes on the floor. Again, this is very important that you do this. You throw them up in the air and you let them shower down. So now I do that. Let them shower down. And you do this lightly. You go over the whole floor lightly. And then if you have more flakes, you want to do it heavier, you just keep putting more on. That way you know you have enough. If you throw them all in one corner and you run out, you're done. There's nothing you can do about it. So this is what I'm going to do.
Okay, so I'm going to start going over the whole floor here. The customer does not want a heavy flake, so I am trying to keep a medium flake consistent all over the whole floor. So you see me going back and forth, and again, it's way easier to put down a light coat over the entire floor and come back over and add more. Once you add too much, it's on the floor, you can't take it up, there's nothing you can do about it. So just take your time and try to do lots of light broadcasts all over. Consistency is so important. I know I always say that. So I'm going to keep going over the floor. I'm showing a lot of this just so people really see how to flake. It's probably the most common question I get is how to apply the flake consistently. So I just want to show the technique I use there, how you throw it up in the air. And you see, even when I throw it, coming out of the bucket, it's like a big wad of flakes, and it just opens up, and by the time it gets to the floor, it opens up in a nice shower and lands gently on the floor. If you don't throw them up in the air, it just lands in a big clump, and then you have these piles of flake all over the floor, which is normally unsightly.
Okay, so now I am walking around in the wet epoxy, just checking for consistency in the flake. And I think we're pretty darn consistent. But again, by throwing them up in the air like that, that's what really makes it consistent. And that looks awfully good to me. So I'm going to step out of here. We're going to close these doors. Then we're going to be back tomorrow, and we're going to do the clear coat. And we're going to put aluminum oxide in that. So I always forget to mention this. If you like what you're seeing, please hit the like button. Please subscribe. We appreciate all your support. I'm trying to educate everybody on how to save some money, do your own floors, or at least see how floors should be done right. So we'll finish up tomorrow, and we'll show you what that looks like. Thank you. One more thing I wanted to mention today before we leave is the flake. This is a 2-gallon bucket. It was filled up to about here. There was about 4 gallons in, or 4 pounds in here, 5 pounds tops. This flake kit, the 500 square foot kit, comes with 15 pounds. So you saw what, I don't know, 4 pounds did in there. So you get quite a bit of flake. Okay, welcome back, day number 2. So yesterday we put the intermediate coat down in the flakes. I'm going to give you a close-up of that. I'm going to vacuum the edges of this thing to get it all ready for today's clear top coat. We're going to go from there. Okay, so we have heavy sun coming in here, but you can kind of see the texture of the floor. You see the consistency of the flake. Of course, these shadow lines look funny. That's what we got all over the floor. So I'm just going to vacuum this threshold here quick. I'm trying to keep things clean, get the flakes off of there. We're going to mix up our clear coat, apply the clear coat, and then we're done for the day. Okay, so real quick before we get started here, I have the sun at my back really bad. It's creating quite a shadow and everything, which is a little awkward. But so here's our top coat we're doing, the CFS 137 MUV. We have our aluminum oxide, and I just poured a little bit in a container here. That's going to be plenty for what we're doing. Our mixing paddle, this is the typical mixing paddle we use. I don't know, what is that, a 3-inch diameter head on that. We have our spike shoes. We have an 18-inch roller. We have a 6-inch roller. And I want to say we have a, what is that, 6-foot or 8-foot extension on the 18-inch roller. Well, it might be 6 foot. which opens up to, I don't know, maybe 11, 12 feet, whatever that is. And that's it. So we're gonna mix this up. Oh, and this is our squeegee. And by the way, our squeegee, it's a 24-inch squeegee. That's an S550 Midwest Rake Professional Series squeegee. But the important part is it has a non-marking blade. That's a gray squeegee blade. If you have a black blade on there and you're doing a top clear coat, you'll actually see the black from the squeegee blade in the clear coat sometimes. You have to be careful. So we're gonna set this up and pour this out and back roll it. Okay, so we mixed up the 137 MUV. This is 3 gallons in a 5-gallon bucket. Again, this is the top coat for the 500 square foot kit that we sell online. I'll show you how we pour this out. Pretty much just like before, you're pouring ribbons out on the floor. That's 4 to 6 inches wide. This material typically goes a lot farther, but you can control it. So if you want it heavier, you put it down heavier. The only thing you have to be concerned, if you put it down too heavy, it's going to get more slippery. I hate to use the word slippery on the floor. So that's all I'm going to pour out for now. You can see how much I still have in the bucket here. We're still, I mean, it was filled to here, so we used less than half. But we're going to squeegee this out a little bit, get a little closer, and determine how much more we need. Again, you don't want to over pour epoxy on the floor, it makes a mess. Now this, we're going to be going up the verticals too, so I'm going to leave a little puddle around the edge when I squeegee, and then we'll roll that puddle up the vertical. We also have to put our aluminum oxide in the floor yet. Now this overhang here makes it a little more involved. See my squeegee, I actually have it tilted forward here, so I can get underneath there. I'm pulling this at a very awkward angle. And a little puddle I leave along the wall there. I always preach consistency, so everything's going to get squeegeed the other direction again anyway. You see that puddle I leave along the wall? Okay. Now, incidentally, somebody's going to ask why I didn't scrape the floor first. Well, this is a partial flake system. Normally you need to scrape the floor if it's a full flake because some of the flakes will be sticking straight up in the air. But by using the squeegee, if there's a flake sticking up, it's just going to snap it off anyway. So now I'm just going to go back and forth into the edges. Consistent pressure on the squeegee. And this clear coat does have a slight amber hue to it, and that's simply so you can see where it is. If you didn't have that, you wouldn't be able to see where you're at. All right, so now we change camera angles here. Jeff is going to wet the roller up. There's a little bit of a puddle, which, again, we talked about wetting up the roller yesterday too, but you just want to make sure you wet it up in a puddle. It's much easier to do. If you try to roll out on the epoxy with a dry roller, it's just going to suck it all up and you're going to leave a dry path on the floor. So Jeff's pretty much got that wet up. All right, so now we both need to work. So I got to put this on the tripod here and record the rest of this.
Sorry, once again, my camera decided to not go in focus for whatever reason. So here I continue squeegeeing out the 137 MUV, and then I'm getting ready to broadcast the aluminum oxide, which I'm going to explain in a second.
Okay, so we squeegeed out the 137 MUV. It has not been back rolled yet, but it's squeegeed out so everything is wet. Now I'm going to use the aluminum oxide, and you can see how much I have here. It's actually not very much. I'm literally just taking a pinch, and you just take it and you throw it up in the air, and just do consistent. Again, consistent is so important. Consistent passes all over the floor, little pinches. So now, when Jeff back rolls this, what he's going to do is take those particles and entrap them in the clear coat. And then you're going to have a nice consistent coat. You're probably throwing this right on Jeff, I apologize. So, and I'm going to grab that camera, and I just want to give you a close-up of before and after it's back rolled so you can see exactly what these particles look like in the clear coat. Again, this is just like the flakes. You throw them up in the air and you let them shower down. If you don't let them shower, you're going to land up with little clumps on the floor, which is not going to look good. And again, it's just not consistent. So now what I'm also going to do is right in front of the door, because everybody's going to go through the door, I'm just going to throw a little bit extra there just to make sure they don't come down to a wet floor and slip. So I'm going to grab that camera from Jeff. I'm going to give you a close-up here. So now it's hard to see in the light here. Can you see those particles in there? I don't know if the sun is helping or hurting, but that's what we have before we back roll it. So we're gonna back roll that in there, and it's gonna be all consistent all across the floor. So I'm gonna have to put this back on time lapse just because we both need both hands.
Okay, so as far as back rolling, I mean, this is just like back rolling any other epoxy coating we do. I'm going to go around the perimeter with that 6-inch edger. I'm just doing that vertical face really quickly just to get something on it. And Jeff is starting to back roll the 137 MUV with the aluminum oxide in it. So now that aluminum oxide is being encapsulated in the epoxy. So this floor will be super easy to clean in the future, and hopefully you get good enough traction from it.
Okay, now we have been back rolled. Again, this sun is brutal. I don't know if this is helping or hurting, so I'm going to give you both shots here. But if you look at the texture, that's the aluminum oxide in there. And if I had to guess, it's like there's one particle maybe every 3/8 of an inch. It's very hard to describe because it's random, you know. But it is applied as consistently as possible. So I am walking very gingerly because you don't want to slide your feet now because it will leave a mark. But this is the finished floor. We're going to walk out. We have to just do the front nose right here with the brush yet, just to get us down to the leading edge. And then we're done. Okay, so we just wrapped up. I just want to do a quick shot here of the outside. Here's the nose. And if people ask why we don't tape that when you do it, it is impossible to tape a surface like that and have the tape actually work. It's just going to wick the epoxy underneath and it's going to leave a big old mess. So this is it. So if you like what you're watching, hit the like button. Please subscribe. We appreciate your support. We'll see you on the next one.
So here's the before picture. You can see the hot tire pickup. This is on the left bay. This is on the right bay. And then here's our after picture. So thanks for watching. We appreciate your support.